When you think of Sodom and Gomorrah, what comes to mind? Fire, brimstone, total destruction. But the most shocking part of this story is what happened before. Before the fire fell, a man stood face to face with God and negotiated 6 times. And every single time, God said yes. This is Genesis 18, and I believe it's going to challenge everything that you thought you knew about prayer. Quick context from last week. 3 mysterious visitors showed up at Abraham's tent, and Abraham fed them this incredible feast. One of them, speaking for the Lord, promised Sarah that she was going to have a baby, and she laughed at him. Now the meal's over. 2 of them get up to leave. You know where they're going? They're headed towards Sodom, where Abraham's nephew Lot lives. But a third one stays back. It's the Lord himself, and he starts thinking out loud. Should I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? He decides, nah, let's go ahead and tell him. He tells Abraham the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great. Judgment is coming. But what was Sodom's actual sin? Most people would say sexual immorality, and that's there. Genesis 19 shows a mob trying to SA some folks that are visiting, but that's not where it started. 800 years later, God would tell Ezekiel to explain Sodom's sin, and Ezekiel will say this was the sin of Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They didn't help the poor nor the needy. You see that? Pride, prosperity, and apathy. Yes, sexual immorality was there, but that wasn't the starting point. Pride led to apathy, and apathy led to systemic injustice. And when you build a society on that foundation, it's going to eventually explode into the depravity that we see in Genesis 19. Sodom wasn't just destroyed for one sin, it collapsed under the weight of corruption. Which brings us back to Abraham. Abraham knows judgment's coming, but he can't stay silent. He steps a little closer and he begins to challenge God. Are you going to sweep away the righteous with the wicked? You're the judge of all the earth. Are you not going to do what's just? No, he's not just begging. This is a legal argument. This is his proposal. What if there are 50 righteous people? Will you spare the city for their sake? And God's response, if I find 50, I'll spare them. So Abraham pushes a little further. 45? Yeah, I'll spare the city for 45. What about 40? For 40, I'll spare it. And he keeps going down the list. 30, I'll spare it. 20, I'll spare it. Now watch this. Abraham knows he's pushing limits, so he balances boldness with humility. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? Then immediately he shifts to, I'm just dust and ashes. You see this? Fearless challenge coupled with humble submission. That's the posture of a true intercessor. Let not the Lord be angry, but let me speak once more. What about 10? And God responds, for the sake of 10, I won't destroy it. Then the Lord went his way. Conversation over. Now you may ask, why did Abraham stop at 10? Maybe 10 represented the minimum community. Later Jewish tradition would require 10 men for prayer, which was called a minyan. No, not one of those. Or maybe God just concluded his lesson right there where his mercy had been fully displayed. But here's what we know for certain. Genesis 19 tells us what happened. The angels arrived and the place was worse than reported. Every man in Sodom surrounded Lot's house, and they demanded his guests come out so they could do you know what with them. The next morning, the fire fell. 4 people walked out of Sodom. Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters. 4. That's not 10, is it? So does that mean that Abraham's prayer failed? Here's what we often miss. Abraham didn't pray God save Lot. He prayed God save the city. Genesis 19:29 says, when God destroyed the cities, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out. See that? God remembered Abraham. The prayer didn't prevent the disaster, but it activated the rescue. Abraham's intercession didn't change God's mind about Sodom's judgment, but it did change the outcome for Lot. The city burned and Lot walked out alive. And that matters for the question that we're about to answer. So here it is. Can your prayers actually change God's mind? Because that's what it looks like. Abraham negotiates, God agrees 6 times. It seems like God is adjusting his plan based on human input. So is prayer powerful or just performance? You know what Jewish tradition calls what Abraham did here? Chutzpah, klape, shemayim, audacity toward heaven. And it's not considered disrespectful. In fact, it's the highest form of prayer. It's a boldness that's rooted so deep that you're willing to challenge something that doesn't normally align with God's character. Abraham's audacity wasn't arrogance, it was trust. But here's what Genesis 18 reveals. God's plan for Sodom never changed. The city was going to be destroyed because there weren't 10 righteous people. God knew that before Abraham even spoke, but his offer was genuine. If there are 50, I'll spare it. These weren't fake options. These were real conditions with real consequences. Abraham wasn't just trying to save the innocent. He was arguing that the presence of a righteous minority could save the guilty majority. That's the power of a righteous remnant. So here's the question. In your workplace, your neighborhood, your city, are you one of the righteous few whose presence may be the only thing standing between judgment and mercy? Your prayer may not stop the fire, but it can pull someone out of it. Abraham's story doesn't end here. The very next chapter, Genesis 19, shows us what happened when the angels actually reached Sodom. And let me tell you, it's not what you would expect. The destruction was total, but the rescue, that's where it gets interesting. Be on the lookout for that episode next week. Until then, click up for the Abraham playlist. And if you want more Bible passages that come alive when we look at them in the context, just subscribe. Hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless you.